In the heart of a glittering mansion, with music rising and crystal glasses clinking, disaster struck. The head chef was gone. Panic filled the kitchen. The elite of the city were already arriving, and there was no one left to save the night. No one, except a quiet young woman most had never even noticed. This night she would either rise to meet destiny or vanish, like so many forgotten faces before her. This is the story of Sophia, and the night everything changed. Before we begin the story, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. The clinking of crystal glasses echoed sharply through Lancaster Hall, where golden chandeliers cast a shimmering glow over an atmosphere heavy with luxury. The ancient grandfather clock ticked, each chime like a hammer in the silence. Only 3 hours left until the grandest banquet of the year. And then, chaos erupted backstage. "He's gone!" A panicked voice cut through the hum of preparations. The news spread like wildfire. The head chef had walked out. No warning, no backup. Henry Lancaster stood frozen in the vast kitchen. His expensive tailored suit couldn't hide the storm brewing beneath his polished exterior. His handsome features tightened, his piercing blue eyes sweeping the room like a hunter searching for prey. A millionaire heir, abandoned on the eve of his most extravagant event, an insult he could not afford. No one dared meet his gaze. Staff scurried like shadows, heads bowed, breath held, as if one wrong move would snap the thread of control. Henry's fist clenched at his side. 300 of the city's elite were arriving, and now, no chef. His gaze darted across the kitchen, sharp and calculating. And then, it stopped Sophia. She stood quietly in the far corner, a kitchen assistant with her hair neatly tied back, still slicing vegetables as if the world weren't crumbling around her. A nobody, a shadow among giants. But today, she was the only one left. Henry's steps echoed across the marble floor as he approached. Each click of his shoes sounded louder, sharper, slicing through the thick air. "You," he said curtly. "Sophia, right?" She looked up, startled, gray eyes wide with a flicker of fear, but no trembling. "Yes, Mr. Lancaster," she replied, her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. Henry tilted his head, assessing her with a look reserved for chess pawns, and then, with a sardonic smirk, half amused, half desperate, he spoke. "Tonight's dinner. It's yours." Gasps rippled through the kitchen. Someone nearly dropped a tray of silverware. Sophia froze. Her? Responsible for $1 million banquet? She was a prep cook, invisible to most. How could she possibly? Henry narrowed his gaze, as if reading her doubts. "Not because I think you're better than the others," he added coldly. "Because there's no one else." No encouragement, no sympathy, only a raw, brutal truth and a choice. Sophia met his gaze, her heart hammered once, twice, and then steadied. If this was her one chance, she would not run. She set her knife down, inhaled deeply, and nodded. "I'll do it." A decision made in front of dozens of skeptical eyes, a single step, onto a battlefield no one believed she could cross. Henry raised an eyebrow, almost surprised. Without another word, he turned and walked away, leaving Sophia standing alone in the chaos, where a tiny, defiant flame began to burn, a flame determined to defy a world that never believed she belonged. The kitchen was a battlefield, not of anger, but of panic. Clanging pots, shouting voices, the sharp staccato of knives on cutting boards filled the air. Steam hissed from boiling pots. The heavy scent of roasted meats and fresh herbs clung to every surface. Chaos ruled until one quiet figure stepped forward. Sophia. Her hands, usually steady from years spent in the background, trembled just once, barely perceptible, before she tightened her grip on the counter. A slow, deliberate breath steadied her. This wasn't just another meal. This was survival. Without waiting for instructions, she moved. Fast, precise. Her voice, usually soft and unnoticed, now cut sharply through the noise. Mark, inventory proteins and vegetables. Lisa, start prepping sauces. Joe, man the grill now. The team, stunned at first, responded almost instinctively. There was no room for questions, no time for fear. There was only Sophia, a small woman commanding a storm. She swept through the kitchen like a conductor through an unruly orchestra, improvising a new menu from the chaos Henry had left behind. She pulled ingredients from pantries and coolers, fingers brushing over each item with swift, practiced care. Fresh local greens, prime cuts of beef, imported spices left untouched for weeks. Every decision was sharp, instinctive, a painter choosing colors with seconds to spare. Above the clamor, her mind raced. Start simple, elevate flavors, focus on freshness. Every dish needed to impress, not just fill plates. Time blurred. The kitchen, once a swirl of confusion, began to move as one, an intricate, breathless dance. Blades flashed under the fluorescent lights. Saucepans simmered with rich aromas. Steam billowed like soft clouds. And there, at the center of it all, Sophia. Her cheeks flushed from the heat, her eyes bright with unwavering focus. She wasn't shouting for attention. She was working. Calm, relentless, sure. Across the grand hall, the first guests had already begun to arrive, glittering like constellations in evening gowns and tailored suits. Henry Lancaster stood near the entrance, his jaw tight, his hands locked behind his back. He glanced toward the kitchen, expecting disaster. Instead, through the swinging door, he caught fleeting glimpses of something different. Order, rhythm, purpose, and Sophia unyielding. The first course was plated and sent out, delicate, vibrant, smelling of earth and sea. Then the second, then the third. Inside the grand hall, a hush began to fall over the room, soft gasps of surprise and murmured praises rippling from table to table. Plates returned empty, glasses raised in toasts. Henry watched, disbelief flickering behind his polished exterior. Among the gold-trimmed splendor beneath the chandeliers that had seen generations of privilege, it was not power or wealth that commanded attention tonight. It was the quiet brilliance of a woman who, just hours ago, had been invisible. A woman who refused to be forgotten. And as Henry stood there, the realization crept over him, slow, undeniable. In a world obsessed with appearances, Sophia was the rarest thing of all. She was real. The final champagne flute had been lifted. The guests, wrapped in velvet and silk, floated toward the exit under the soft haze of chandelier light, their laughter lingering like perfume in the air. In the heart of the now silent kitchen, Sophia wiped her hands on a linen cloth, exhaustion tugging at her limbs. But before she could breathe, he appeared. Henry Lancaster. The sharp scent of his cologne reached her first, clean and cool, a contrast to the lingering aroma of roasted meats and herbs. He stood framed in the doorway, a silhouette cut against the golden light of the hall, hands tucked casually into his pockets, a small smirk playing on his lips. "You did better than I expected," he said, voice smooth but edged like a knife. Sophia didn't flinch. She met his gaze, steady and unblinking, the cloth still clutched in her hands. "I wasn't trying to impress you," she replied simply, her voice even. Henry's smile deepened, not mocking this time, but almost intrigued. He crossed the room in slow, deliberate steps, stopping just a few feet away. "I'm opening a restaurant," he said, as if discussing the weather. "Downtown. Prime location. Big, bold. Different. He paused, letting the weight of his words hang between them. I want you to run the kitchen. Sophia stared at him for a long moment, the words settling over her like a strange, heavy cloak. A proposal like that, from a man like Henry Lancaster, wasn't made lightly, or without strings. Her expression didn't change, but something sharpened behind her eyes. "Why me?" she asked, tone crisp, cutting through the stale air of flattery. Henry tilted his head slightly, as if studying a new kind of opponent. His voice lowered, almost a murmur. "Because you're real," he said. "Because in a room full of pretenders you actually did something worth remembering." The words sounded sincere, but sincerity came too easily from men like him. Sophia set the cloth down carefully. Her hands were steady now, her mind clearer than it had been all night. "I don't work for people who think they're doing me a favor," she said, her voice low but firm. "If you want a puppet to stand in the kitchen while you show off to your friends, find someone else." The smirk on Henry's face faltered, just for a moment. Then, slowly, something else flickered in his expression, something closer to respect. "I'm not offering charity," he said, a trace of steel slipping into his voice. "I'm offering a partnership." Sophia held his gaze, searching for cracks beneath the polished charm. What she found, surprisingly, wasn't arrogance or condescension. It was hunger. Not for success alone, but for something genuine. Still, she didn't smile. She didn't rush to accept. "You'll treat me as an equal," she said. "Or not at all." Henry's mouth twitched. Not quite a grin, not quite a scowl. "Agreed," he said finally. And just like that, without ceremony or fanfare, a deal was struck. Not between a king and his servant, but between two people who somehow saw something rare in each other, something worth risking everything for. The floor-to-ceiling windows of the soon-to-be restaurant caught the afternoon light, spilling gold across the dusty concrete. Architects and designers buzzed around with blueprints and color swatches, but at the center of it all, two figures stood locked in a silent battle. Henry Lancaster and Sophia Hart. He wore a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled just so, designer watch glinting at his wrist. She stood opposite, arms crossed, apron dusted with flour, a stubborn tilt to her chin. "You're missing the point," Henry said, his voice clipped, precise. He tapped a glossy mock-up with the back of his pen, a grand dining room drenched in gold and crystal. "People want a show. They want spectacle. They want to feel like they're somewhere better than everyone else." Sophia didn't blink. Instead, she leaned slightly forward, eyes narrowing. "And what about the food, Henry?" Her tone was low, tight. "If they're just coming for the glitter, why bother with the kitchen at all? Sell them mirrors instead." A muscle twitched in Henry's jaw. He dropped the pen onto the table with a soft clatter. "This isn't a soup kitchen, Sophia. It's a business," he said, stepping closer. The air between them crackled, charged, electric. Sophia straightened her spine, refusing to back away, her voice sharpened, slicing through the tension. And authenticity sells too. People can taste when something's real, and when it's just a hollow showpiece. Henry's eyes flashed, a glint of challenge, not anger. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Just a long, hard stare, blue locked with gray, pride clashing against principle. Across the room, an intern paused, sensing the tension, pretending to fiddle with papers. Henry broke first, a short huff of breath, half laugh, half frustration. "You're impossible," he muttered. "And you're predictable," Sophia shot back without missing a beat. He studied her then, really studied her. The set of her shoulders, the fire banked low behind her steady gaze. Not reckless fire, not blind ambition, conviction. Henry's lips curved just slightly, a reluctant, almost admiring smile. "Maybe that's what we need," he said under his breath. Sophia didn't smile. She uncrossed her arms and tapped a finger once, firmly, on the original floor plan. "Then we start with the kitchen layout," she said. "Not the chandelier budget." Henry chuckled, shaking his head. For the first time, it wasn't a battle he felt he had to win. Maybe it was one he was meant to fight with her, not against her. And so, without realizing it, in that sun-drenched, half-finished space, something shifted. Not defeat, not surrender, but the first uneasy threads of a real partnership, stitched together not by agreement, but by fire. If you've read this far, comment Coca below. The rain came in sheets that afternoon, drumming against the wide glass windows of the half-finished restaurant. Outside, the city blurred into muted grays. The sharp edges of buildings softened into shadows. Inside, the once vibrant energy had faded. Henry Lancaster sat alone at the end of a long, unfinished bar, elbows braced against the cool marble, head bowed slightly between his hands. His tie hung loose at his throat. His jacket had long been discarded onto a nearby chair. Blueprints lay scattered before him, edges curling with moisture. Numbers, costs, delays, each figure a weight he could no longer carry with ease. The air was heavy with the scent of wet concrete and old wood, and something else, something harder to name. Defeat. Henry exhaled slowly, staring blankly at the surface of the bar, as if willing it to provide answers he no longer believed existed. Maybe it's not worth it. The thought came unbidden, bitter and sharp. All the effort, all the fighting. For what? A restaurant no one asked for? A dream built on shaky ground? The doubts, once easy to push aside, now coiled tight around his chest. He didn't hear Sophia approach at first. Her footsteps were soft, deliberate. But when he finally looked up, she was already there. Standing across from him, hands resting lightly on the bar, her posture firm, her gaze unwavering. No pity in her eyes, no fear, only something stronger, something steadier than he had expected. "You're thinking about giving up," she said quietly. Not a question. A truth spoken aloud, simple and merciless. Henry straightened a little, instinctively defensive, but the protest died on his tongue. Sophia didn't wait for him to deny it. Instead, she leaned forward slightly, her voice low, steady, a lifeline in the gathering storm. "Remember why you started this, Henry," she said. "Not for the investors, not for the headlines. You wanted to build something real, something that mattered." The rain intensified, pounding against the glass like 1,000 restless hands. Henry searched her face, looking for anger, frustration, some reflection of his own weariness. But there was only conviction, and a calm strength he hadn't realized she'd carried all along. "You told me," Sophia continued, softer now, "that you wanted a place that meant something. Not just another glittering shell. Something honest, something lasting." Her words struck deeper than any of the financial reports or looming deadlines. Henry swallowed hard, feeling the invisible weight shift, not lifted but shared. He raked a hand through his hair, the movement weary but less hopeless now. "And what if it's too much?" he asked, voice rough, almost broken. "What if we're chasing a fantasy?" Sophia didn't blink, didn't waver. "Then we chase it together," she said simply. "And if we fail, at least it will be for the right reasons." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sounds were the rain and the slow, steady beat of two hearts refusing to surrender. And in that stillness, something shifted, subtle but profound. Henry realized not with a shout, but with a quiet, humbling certainty that somewhere along the way the girl he had once seen as expendable had become the one holding the flame. Not him. Her. And somehow. He was okay with that. Henry drew a slow breath, the tightness in his chest easing just a little. He reached for the plans on the counter and smoothed them out beneath his hands. Sophia watched him silently, a faint, knowing smile at the corner of her mouth. The project, the dream, still teetered on a knife's edge. But tonight it would not fall. Not because of money, not because of power, but because two stubborn souls refused to let it die. Together. The restaurant, still unfinished, lay wrapped in a soft hush that only late nights could weave. Outside, the streets were deserted, the city lights blurring into soft halos against the misted windows. Inside, the kitchen was aglow with a few working lamps, casting pools of golden light over scattered ingredients, open sketchbooks, and half-empty coffee cups. Sophia and Henry sat side by side at a long counter, the remnants of their evening's work spread between them, notes on flavor pairings, delicate plating sketches, test menus scribbled hastily in the margins. Neither spoke for a long while. Their shoulders brushed occasionally. Light, accidental. Or maybe not so accidental. Sophia leaned forward, chin resting in her palm, studying a draft menu illuminated by the warm light. Henry, sitting just inches away, wasn't looking at the papers anymore. He was looking at her. There was no urgency in his gaze, no grand epiphany, just a quiet realization settling into his bones. Slow, inevitable. The way she frowned slightly when concentrating. The way she absently tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear, not realizing how that small, simple act unraveled something inside him. Sophia felt the weight of his gaze before she saw it. Slowly, she lifted her eyes. Their gazes met, a fraction longer than necessary. Not questioning, not daring, just seeing. The low hum of a refrigerator filled the silence, a steady heartbeat in the background. Henry's hand shifted, as if he might reach for her. Instead, his fingers brushed against hers where they both rested lightly on the countertop. Barely a touch. A whisper of contact. Sophia's breath caught, so slight it could have been imagined. She didn't move away. The moment stretched between them, fragile and electric. Henry spoke first, his voice lower, rougher than usual, almost apologetic. "I don't know when this changed," he said, barely above a whisper. But it did. Sophia didn't answer. Couldn't. The words would have broken something delicate hanging in the air between them. Instead, she simply looked at him, into the man behind the air, the architect behind the ambition. Henry's hand withdrew slowly, fingers brushing hers one last time. A silent promise, or maybe a question yet unspoken. Sophia lowered her gaze, pretending to study the papers again, even as her heart thrummed like a bird's wings against her ribs. They returned to their work, at least on the surface. Notes were shuffled, ideas murmured, plans made. But something essential had shifted. No declarations were made, no grand gestures unfurled, only the quiet certainty that somewhere along the way, without permission or pretense, something fragile and fierce had taken root between them. And it was growing. The storm didn't break with thunder or rain. It came quietly, in the form of a woman. Eleanor. She arrived at the restaurant late in the afternoon, just as the last beams of daylight stretched thin across the polished floors. Dressed in a sharp, tailored coat, her heels clicked authoritatively across the marble, echoing through the quiet lobby. There was something unsettling in her presence, not loud, not angry, colder, sharper, like the edge of a blade hidden beneath silk. Sophia met her at the host stand, a polite smile playing on her lips, though her instincts prickled with warning. "I'm here to see Henry Lancaster," Eleanor said smoothly, voice carrying the weight of old, unfinished wars. Sophia hesitated, sensing the disturbance in the air. "I'm afraid Mr. Lancaster is busy. Perhaps I can—" Eleanor's smile cut clean through the polite barrier. "I'll wait." She said it with the kind of confidence only someone who knew too much could muster. And so Sophia led her to a corner of the lobby and offered her a seat she did not take. The conversation, when it finally happened, was brief. Brutal. Sophia overheard fragments from where she stood by the entrance, accusations wrapped in velvet words, old partnerships soured, promises broken, and Henry, normally composed, unshakable, standing rigid, jaw tight, hands fisted at his sides. By nightfall, the damage was done. The story hit the media like a spark in dry grass. Headlines screamed from every glossy screen. "Lancaster's betrayals, former partner speaks out." "The man behind the $1 million dream, a house of cards?" The restaurant, barely on its feet, trembled under the weight of public suspicion. Inside the kitchen, the tension grew thick enough to taste, heavier than the scent of roasting lamb, sharper than the citrus oils Sophia was prepping for tomorrow's service. She found Henry standing alone by the service elevator, the pale overhead lights carving deep lines into his face. Sophia approached, her footsteps deliberate, unhurried. Her heart was pounding, but her voice, when it came, was steady, almost cold. "Tell me the truth, Henry." He didn't pretend not to know what she meant. He turned slowly, his face a careful mask, but his eyes betrayed him. Dark, tired, raw. "Eleanor," he began, then stopped. A muscle twitched at his jaw. "I didn't use her, not the way she says, but I made promises I couldn't keep. I was young, stupid, focused on winning." Sophia's expression didn't soften. She crossed her arms, anchoring herself against the urge to look away. "And now?" she asked, voice low. "Unforgiving." Henry stepped closer, not enough to intimidate, but enough to make sure she heard every word. "Now I know better," he said, and there was no polish left in him, only rough edges and regret. "I'm not proud of who I was, but you—" He faltered, searching her face for something, anger, disappointment, or maybe just a door still ajar. "You are not them," he finished quietly, "and this, what we're building, is not a game." The silence between them stretched taut, a wire pulled to its breaking point. Sophia held his gaze, feeling the weight of years she hadn't lived but now had to judge. She didn't answer right away, because forgiveness, real forgiveness, didn't come fast. It didn't come easy. And Henry Lancaster, for all his charm and promises, would have to earn it if he still could. The whispers didn't die overnight. In the days following Eleanor's revelations, the restaurant felt like a glass house under siege, every move scrutinized, every glance from a customer heavy with unspoken doubts. Reservations plummeted. Phone calls went unanswered. Staff spoke in hushed tones, casting anxious looks toward the office where Henry and Sophia worked late into the night. But neither of them, not Henry, not Sophia, flinched. Not once. They didn't chase headlines. They didn't hold press conferences or stage public apologies. Instead, they returned to what they knew best, to what had brought them together in the first place. The work. In the kitchen, Sophia pushed her team harder, not with anger, but with a fierce, quiet determination. Every dish that left her line was a declaration. We are still here. We are still worthy. Henry, for his part, shed the last remnants of the polished air he had once been. He spent long hours on the floor, greeting guests with a sincerity that was impossible to fake. He learned the names of the farmers supplying their produce, personally visited the vineyards they sourced their wines from. In those long, exhausting days, they rebuilt not just a restaurant, but the foundation of who they were. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't easy, but it was real, and slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the tide began to turn. A few loyal customers returned, drawn by the undeniable warmth that radiated from the food, the service, the atmosphere. Whispers of quality began to spread in quiet corners of the city. And then, a break. A renowned food critic, known for his brutal honesty and sharp tongue, visited under the radar. No warning, no fanfare. Sophia found out only when she spotted him at a corner table, tasting her dishes with slow, deliberate care. That night, they didn't dare hope. They simply worked, hands steady, hearts braced for whatever would come. The review hit the internet the next morning. It wasn't good. It was extraordinary. The critic praised the restaurant's authenticity, its refusal to pander to trends or theatrics. He spoke of the food as honest, soulful, an anchor in a world obsessed with surface over substance. He wrote of the team's spirit, of a place that, against all odds, had chosen to stand taller when it would have been easier to fall. Within hours, reservations flooded back. Journalists requested interviews. Social media, once ruthless, now buzzed with admiration. Sophia stood in the kitchen when the news broke, hands still dusted with flour, a mixing spoon hanging loosely from her fingers. Henry found her there, breathless, a rare boyish grin breaking across his usually guarded face. "We did it," he said simply. Sophia didn't smile right away. She just looked at him, really looked, and saw the exhaustion, the scars of the battle they'd fought, and the flicker of hope still burning fiercely behind his eyes. Finally, she let out a shaky breath and nodded. "Not quite yet," she said, voice steady. "But we're getting there." Henry laughed, low and genuine, the sound filling the warm kitchen. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, they allowed themselves a small moment, not of triumph, but of quiet, hard-earned belief. They had survived the storm. Not by hiding, not by pretending, but by standing together and proving, one plate at a time, that what was real could still win. The cabin stood tucked beneath a canopy of whispering pines, its weathered wood glowing warm against the soft amber of the setting sun. Beyond it, the lake stretched out like a sheet of polished glass, barely rippling under the tender breath of evening wind. Here, there were no flashing cameras, no headlines, no lingering doubts, only the hush of nature and two people who had fought too long to pretend any longer. Henry had planned it quietly, no grand gestures, no declarations, just a drive north, a promise of quiet, and a small wooden cabin where the world could not find them. Sophia stepped out onto the porch, a sweater draped loosely over her shoulders, her hair tousled by the breeze. She inhaled deeply, letting the crisp air, clean, untouched, fill her lungs. Henry watched from the doorway for a moment, silent. Not the calculating gaze he wore in boardrooms, not the guarded stare he used to shield himself from the world, just a man seeing a woman, not for what she had done for him, but for who she was, standing freely beneath the open sky. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said finally, voice low, almost reverent. Sophia turned slightly, smiling, not the polite smile she gave guests or investors, but something softer, something real. "It's perfect," she said. The hours drifted by like the slow current of the lake. They cooked a simple meal together, laughing over clumsy mistakes. They sat by the fire pit, sipping wine, trading quiet stories as the stars stitched themselves into the darkening sky. No talk of critics, no talk of pressure, just the easy rhythm of two souls breathing in the same quiet. As the night deepened, they walked down to the water's edge, where the moon floated like a silver coin on the surface. The world around them was hushed, as if holding its breath. Henry stopped first, turning to face her fully under the soft spill of moonlight. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. The wind played lightly with the hem of Sophia's sweater. The scent of pine and cold water filled the air between them. Henry reached out, slowly, carefully, and tucked a stray lock of hair behind Sophia's ear. His fingers brushed her cheek, lingering just a second longer than necessary. Sophia's eyes lifted to meet his, and in that glance, steady, searching, tender, the last walls between them crumbled. He leaned in, not rushed, not demanding. She met him halfway. The kiss was quiet, unhurried, more a question than a conquest, and yet more certain than any promise either had spoken aloud. It wasn't fireworks, it wasn't fanfare, it was the soft collision of two weary hearts finding, at last, a place to rest. When they pulled apart, neither rushed to speak. Words would have only diminished what had already been said without sound. Instead, they stood there, still by the lake, beneath the endless sky, simply letting the world fall away around them. For the first time, they weren't building anything, fighting anything, proving anything. They were just there, together, and neither of them, for once, felt the need to run. What did you think of Sophia and Henry's story? Leave your thoughts in the comments. On a scale from 0 to 10, how would you rate this story? If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more inspiring stories like this one.